Around 600 million years ago, complex animal life was still young and rudimentary. In this era immediately preceding the Cambrian explosion, known as the Ediacaran, the oceans were filled with primitive animal organisms like jellyfish, sponges, hydra, and many other groups whose lineages would not survive into the modern day. The vast majority of these ancient animals were radially symmetrical, shaped like circles or spheres or cylinders, with a top and a bottom, but with no distinct front or back end, with no distinct left or right side. These animals had only a single orifice through which food was consumed and waste excreted. The sponges had even less than this, as they were simply filter feeders that extracted nutrients out of the water flowing through their pores and channels. It would be tens of millions of years before the first bilaterally symmetrical animals emerged, as revealed to us by a fossilized deposit in Nilpena, South Australia. This deposit is 555 million years old, and it contains the fossilized tracks of a small, stubby, worm-like creature, no larger than a grain of rice, which scurried its way across the muddy upper layer of the silt-laden seafloor. Now, at first glance, this little creeping worm-like animal might seem totally insignificant, but it actually represents an incredible and amazing discovery. It represents a super important milestone in evolutionary history. So, the discovery of these animals is the product of a 15-year search. 15 years ago, we discovered the fossilized mud sample in South Australia. We saw the tracks and the burrows, but we couldn't find the fossils of the creatures that made them. That is, until recently, thanks to the efforts of doctoral graduate student Scott Evans and geologist Dr. Mary Drosser at UC Riverside. The team used a 3D laser scanner to analyze a strange feature of the fossilized sample, namely a number of small, oval-shaped pits and depressions fossilized in the surface of the rock. This 3D scan revealed that there was a consistent shape and texture to the depressions, representing the grooved muscles of a primitive worm-like body. The features all had a consistent size, around 2 to 7 millimeters long and 1 to 2.5 millimeters wide. With this discovery, Mr. Evans and Dr. Drosser had identified the ancient creatures that had made the burrows in the Nilpena fossil, and they named them Icaria wariutia. Analysis of the Icaria fossils showed that, to move, they would engage in regular contractions of their muscles, engaging in peristaltic motion much like a modern earthworm. Mr. Evans said, quote, "The displaced sediment around their tracks suggests they had a mouth at the front, which picked through the mud and silt to find particles of food. This food was digested in a gut and then excreted through an anus at the end of the body." So anatomically, Icaria has a distinct head and tail region. And this is really important, because if you have a distinct head and tail region, you're not radially symmetrical like all of the other animals that existed at the time. You're bilaterally symmetrical. Mr. Evans said, quote, "Burrows of Icaria occur lower than anything else. It's the oldest fossil we get with this type of complexity. Dickinsonian and other big things were probably evolutionary dead ends. We knew that we also had lots of little things, and thought that these might have been the early bilaterians that we were looking for." Unquote. Dr. Drosser said, quote, "This is what evolutionary biologists predicted. It's really exciting that what we have found lines up so neatly with their prediction." Unquote. This prediction that she talks about is that the earliest bilaterally symmetrical animals would have emerged around this time period, around 550 to 560 million years ago, and the Icaria wariutia fits the bill perfectly. They are the oldest bilaterally symmetrical animal known to science, which could perhaps make them one of the earliest ancestors of all bilaterally symmetrical life on Earth. The squid and the snails, the insects and arachnids, the fish, the amphibians, the reptiles, the birds, and the mammals, they could have all had a common ancestor in this stubby, mud-dwelling worm that lived 555 million years ago. That is why this is such an incredible and amazing discovery. It could very well be an ancestor, or a close relative to the ancestor, of all bilaterally symmetrical life that's alive today, including us. This is amazing, and it's really incredible evidence of a truly humble evolutionary origin.